Okay, let's talk about financial ruin. Okay. And let me share with you, first of all, as we have on the screen there. Okay. Um, Bear with me here a little bit. Okay. Is because, first of all, we're not financial planners, we're not CPAs, we're not attorneys, okay? But what we can tell you is what from our own experiences and our clients' experiences, what you should have. Exactly what you should have, and I want to preface this, is going to really determine on your own personal situations. Because my situation on what I need to protect myself, okay, may be entirely different from yours. Okay, and so we would not want to enter into that. But at the end of the webinar today, we are going to give you people that you can talk to, CPAs, financial planners, and they can dig into your situation and find out what's best for you. But one thing is for certain, you need to be protected as far as, from any major liability. Now, a lot of people, they talk about LLCs, they talk about S-Corp. Okay, so basically an LLC, it's a limited liability company. Okay, so that's first of all, and S-Corp is a subchapter S corporation. Okay, so what I want to talk about is what is the difference between an LLC and an S-Corp? Basically, an LLC is a business entity, while an S-Corp is a tax classification. So everybody says, well, what should I have? Well, again, we can't tell you, but we can get people who can tell you what to have. But to take it, to shorten it, because this is a subject we could talk about literally for an hour and a half. But basically, a lot of people, if you only have one or two properties, you're normally best just to do an LLC. And if you're going to start making money, meaning, let's say now your properties are paid off, okay, then, and they're starting to create cash flow, then you want to go and elect to have a sub or S-Corp tax classification. So you can have an LLC, but take the classification of an S-Corp. Why do you want to do that? Because it's going to be a lot better for you on taxes, that's why. But while the property, if it's not making any real money, then it's really not going to be that big of a difference, okay? Normally what we see is people that have multiple properties are normally going to have an LLC with S-Corps, okay? Where, if people only have one or two properties, you can do an LLC. And what's great about an LLC, we'll give you the link here. You can actually do it online. It's very, very simple. And, but one thing is for certain is you do need to have as far as protection. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is why do you need it? Well, first of all, you want to protect other assets. For examples, if a resident falls down the steps in your rental property, okay, and let's say they have long-term injuries, let's say it's not fatal, or even if it was fatal, what you want to do is protect yourself so they can only take that property. In other words, if you have the asset protected and it's put in an LLC and somebody falls down the stairs, what's going to happen is they can only come after whatever equity is in the house. What they can't do is they can't go and get your personal property, your savings account, okay? The only thing they can't touch is your retirement, okay? But they could take everything that you have to settle that judgment, okay? And so that's what you're trying to protect. Now, a lot of times people say, well, how many LLCs do I need? Well, sometimes you may need a couple, 2 or 3. If a property is free and clear, okay, compared to, let's say you have one property that's free and clear and the other 2 properties are leveraged to the hilt, so to speak, there's not much equity in them, then you might have one LLC for those 2 and a different LLC for the one that's free and clear, okay? So that way, if somebody got hurt on one of the properties that was highly leveraged, then they can't come back into the other LLC that the properties that's free and clear, okay? So again, this is a very deep subject, but just keep in mind, the whole purpose of the webinar today is to make sure you get some kind of liability protection as far as on your property. The other thing of it is you want to make certain that you don't let everybody else know what you own. In other words, you need to fly under the radar. How do you do that? Why? By having LLCs that's going to help. Now, if somebody really wants to dig, but most of the time, here's what happens. Somebody gets injured in your rental property. What they do is they go to an attorney, and the attorney says, well, let's look and see if they have any assets. So they do a search. Okay. If you have all the properties in your personal name and it comes up that, oh, you know, Tyler, he has 7 properties. So, and they look and they go, oh, they're all worth 500, 600, 700,000. Well, there's got to be some equity in there. So the attorney goes, yeah, I'll take the case. But if they look in there and they see that Tyler only owns his property that he's living in, and they can't find his rental properties, the attorney may say, you know what? I don't think there's any, what I call juice here, so to speak. There's no equity. So we're chasing a ghost. That's what they would be saying to a resident that wants to maybe file suit on you. So that's why you don't want to have everybody, you know what you have. The other thing of it is tax reasons. Obviously, you want to be able to pass it through on your personal return and eliminate double taxation, which you would have on a C Corp, not an S Corp, but a C Corp. All right. And again, the financial planners and the CPA, they can dig in, to the weeds a little bit deeper as far as on that. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the cases where, landlords have been sued from tenants and awarded judgments, and how to avoid them. I'll just give you a couple, and these were out of Delaware. 2 women in Delaware, because of a mold, and the landlord did not take the steps to take care of the mold, were awarded just a little over $1 million. Okay, on that one deal. And in another case, a couple of tenants were awarded $4.3 million. Okay, and in the $4.3 million case, the owner actually tried to coerce the residents not to file a lawsuit. And so when that came up in the trial, of course, the hammer just came down on him, and that's probably why the judgment was so big. But point of it is, let's say it was a $4.3 million, judgment. Well, if you have a house and it's worth 500 and you owe 350 on it, the only thing they can get is 150,000. Okay, but if you don't have protection on that property they got hurt on, and they got sick from the mold, they're going to go after everything you have except your retirement. So that's what we talk about as far as on financial ruin. So let's talk a little bit about mold, okay? Because a lot of people say, well, what causes mold? The main thing that causes mold is excessive moisture, okay? And that kind of comes from, we don't have basements in California, but in other parts of the country they do, okay? That's one. You also, in terms of bathrooms, kitchens, under the sink, your air conditioning is a big a mold situation. The condenser, and the condensation that collects in the lines and stuff, if those aren't cleaned out and stuff, it's going to create a lot of mold, okay? The other thing that creates it is your roof leaking. Now, most people think, well, my roof isn't leaking because my resident didn't say anything was dripping out of the ceiling. Well, if you wait till it comes out of the ceiling in the kitchen, it's probably too late, because it's probably been leaking for years on top of the roof with the rain coming in, and all your rafters, all your crawl space could be totally infested as far as with mold, and you don't even know about it. Okay, so even at Management One now, we're doing things like having your roofs checked when we do an annual inspection. If we feel that, there could be situations there where rain's getting in, then we want to make sure it's protected. I just did it on just 3 of the properties I own in Riverside, and each one of them cost me about $400 to $600. But we found huge places where around the pipes over the years, the glue and the stuff they put around to seal that had come out. Okay, and so for $400, $600, they was able to go through the entire roof, and that'll probably be good for another 10 years. So what I'm saying is, to prevent mold, it's using preventative maintenance, having the AC, service on an annual basis, and the condensation lines, making sure the roof is where it needs to be. Those are the 2 big ones. And a lot of people say, well, how do you know on the mold? How do you find it? Well, number one, the crawl space is another one that you need to look at, but also basically follow your nose. Okay, mold has a very musky smell, and especially after a huge rain or a flood, if you start to smell things differently, okay, that's normally an indication you may have some mold somewhere. Okay, now a lot of times people say, well, yeah, the M word, you know, the mold word, and nobody wants to bring it up. But here's the thing, if you let this go, it can really increase the cost, you know, substantially. For an example, like let's say you may have a little bit and you go, well, it's not a really big deal, and you don't have it investigated. That thing that could have cost maybe $1,000 to fix, in a year from now might be 30,000. Okay, and for an example, like crawl space will run you anywhere from 1,000 to 4,000. If you have to go to the walls or the attic, you could be talking 2,000 to 6,000. But if you have widespread damage, you could be talking at least $30,000 more, because they're talking about tearing out walls. You could be even tearing out some of the 2x4s or rafters. You're talking a huge expense. So this isn't something like, well, I'll get around to it when I get around to it. I don't have the money right now. I would recommend we try to find the money, either get a loan or something, and get it checked out as far as on it. The other thing on mold is we need to notify your insurance companies immediately. Most time, if they come out and do a mold detection, it's going to run $500 to $1,500. But in most cases, your insurance companies will pick up that tab. Okay, but keep in mind, on mold, most states have a statute of limitations. So if you have mold and you don't turn it in and those limitations go out, your insurance company is not going to cover anything. So we're very cautious of this when we do your annual inspections or when we rehab a property in between. Okay, that's why today you may see now on your annual inspections, we'll recommend that you do what we call a drone roof assessment. They actually send a drone pilot out to your property. We let the resident know if it's occupied. And for about $129, they'll take about 20, 25 pictures of the roof. And they'll be able to and give you an estimate whether how much roof life you have left, should you have it repaired, or if you have to replace it, what it's going to be. And so it's $129, and you're going to write half of that off on your income taxes. So now you're talking what, $60, $70? You know, and so it could go a long ways for prevention. So preventative maintenance, you know, and taking care of business up front is huge. Okay. Obviously, when a resident, you know, is injured, you know, that's where a lot of things are going to come into play. I'll just give you an idea. Most people if it's fatal, most insurance companies are looking at probably a minimum of $5 million for that death. So if two people were to die, they're going to come after you for $10 million. So they're going to come after your insurance company first, then they're going to come after the property that the resident was injured in, then they're going to come after whatever you have personally as far as on this. So, and by the way, we're not sharing this with you today to scare you, because a lot of you I know still own your properties in a sole proprietorship. Okay, but we got to change that. Okay, so we make sure you guys are protected. And the other thing where people get sued is quiet and enjoyment. It's like when you rent your property, basically you still own the deed rights to that property, but you no longer have right of possession of that property. Even though you hold the deed to it, you don't have the right to create, you know, going to the property unannounced, harassing the resident. Okay, the fair housing is very clear on that. You cannot do that. Okay, and people can file suit as far as on those situations, and that's something you don't want to get into. So that's why we tell you, if you ever want to see your property, let us go with you. That way we always have two people there, you know, in case they were saying something, you know, or something was said, we have two people there to say, well, it wasn't said. So, all right. Now, how hard is it to set up an LLC and an S-Corp? It's pretty 4 easy steps. Basically, pick a fun name. Okay, you can pick any name. All right, and then you open a bank account in the LLC or S-Corp name. Okay, here's why. When you have an LLC, the rent must go to the LLC, and then all your mortgage payments, insurance payment, repairs, they must come out of that bank account. You can't have half coming from your personal account and half from the LLC checking account or checking savings, okay? Because if they go in and they audit that, they're going to throw it out, okay? So everything has to go through it. Now, can you loan the LLC money? Yes, you can make a loan to the LLC, okay? And then the LLC can pay you back that loan at 1% interest, okay? But it's a loan, you're not commingling the funds. So that's, excuse me, is very specific on that as far as requirements. Once that is done, then you put the property address into the LLC using a quit claim deed and have it recorded. Okay, it's not that difficult. We'll show you in a second where to go to do this. And you just go down to the county clerk and you have it recorded. Okay, now once it's recorded, then you have one last thing you have to do. And that is, if we're managing the property, you would come to us and say, I've got my LLC set up, you know, it's ABC Corporation or ABC LLC, you know, and so then what we would do is go to the resident and have them sign a lease modification saying that now the lease is between ABC LLC and not, you know, Tyler Sudman. Okay. So you're going to manage the LLC, but the agreement, the lease agreement is going to be between the LLC and the resident. And once that is done, then your protection is now in place. Okay. But you have to make certain that you're not using a little bit of personal money, you know, to go ahead and pay for a hot water heater. If you're going to do that, you got to loan the LLC again the money, and then the LLC writes the check for the hot water heater. All right. So what's it cost for an LLC or S-Corp? Initial filing is about $80 on an LLC. S-Corp's a little bit more, $149. If you use one of the companies that we've used, LegalZoom.com, they actually have attorneys at LegalZoom that are actually pretty inexpensive that can actually walk you through this. All right. And you don't need to pay an attorney $2,000 to go ahead and set it up. Annual reoccurring fees in California, this is substantial. It's $800. Whoops, it's $800 on a LLC, and an S-Corp 800 or 1.5% of the net income, whichever is greater. So sometimes this can be, you know, expensive. If you own 10 properties, that could be $8,000 a year, right? Now that is a tax write-off, okay? And even though that sounds like a lot, and it is, a whole lot less would be if someone was to get injured and they come after the property. And so those are your recurring costs. Now, if you own property in other states, for an example, in Florida, it's $138 a year, okay? So depending on what state you reside in, you know, it may determine, again, am I going to do an LLC, you know, or not, okay? But one thing is for certain, ladies and gentlemen, we do, and we are asking that this is something that you make a priority and get it out, be in your personal residence. Because I know a lot of you in our Hall of Fame dinner we had, which I know some of you were on the call today. And by the way, it was great to see you. All right. We had a great time, just amazing time at the Hall of Fame. But a lot of you are now living off of the income and enjoying your life, you know, from the rental properties that are now free and clear. And I think the one thing I got out of the Hall of Fame dinner more than anything, I asked everybody, well, what are you doing now? And everybody's telling me, well, what do you mean, what are we doing? All the properties that you sold us and now they're free and clear, we're going on vacation. So it was very heartwarming to see that. But you know what? I want that to continue. And I can only do that if we go ahead and make sure you're protected as far as from liability. Now, are there other vehicles to protect yourself from financial ruin? And the answer is yes. Okay. Another angle is insurance. Okay. You could have an umbrella policy. There's such a thing that you could have for an example, we have one investor, he has 14 properties. Okay. And he has where he's protected up to 5 million on each individual property. Okay. And his premium, you know, for that is a couple $1,000s a year. Okay. So that's, if you look at that, to have that compared to having everything in an LLC, then that might be more advantageous to you. Okay. But again, I don't know, you know, your whole situation. So that's where the financial planners and the CPA would come into play. Also, Kristen, as I'm thinking about it, I want to make certain that we have and add to that before we send it out, a couple of the insurance brokers that can work with everybody here today. Okay. And
Okay.
that'll give you another option. The other thing is a trust. We have at the end here, you'll see two financial planners. One is the one I use, and another one is the one that, you know, Kristen has used as far as set up your trust. And that's another way to go ahead and get yourself protected, you know, from liability. The other beautiful thing of what we're talking about here today, guys, is making sure that if you're going to give it, and your kids in most cases are the beneficiary, right? Not always, but most of the time they are. You want to make sure they don't have to end up going through probate. Okay, because that's not fun, and it's very, very expensive and very time consuming. Okay, and so by not only protecting your property, but also by getting involved in maybe a trust and some financial planning, you're going to be able to see that, hey, I can pick up some extra tax write-offs. I can make sure my properties are protected, and I can also set myself up so when something does happen to me, and it will happen to all of us, okay, you know, eventually we'll pass away, that my children are going to get it the way I want them to get it. Okay, for an example, you could set it up that if one of your kids is going to get the property, then you can match whatever they make. So if they go out and make, you know, 50,000 a year, you can say, okay, then the trust pays them another 50. Okay, it's kind of an incentive wise as far as for your children, depending on what age they are. So there's a lot of neat things that come out of setting up a trust and stuff. Everybody asks, well, what's the cost of that? Well, it depends on the size of your trust, but you could be talking $3,000 to $4,000 as far as to set up a trust. Okay. And then the other thing would be a SCorp. That's another possibility. But again, in SCorp, you got to be careful because you could end up with double taxation. So that's normally not what I've seen in my career, not the best way to go. I would say that would be at the bottom of the list when it comes to selecting something, but your financial planner would be able to help you out on that. Okay, so LegalZoom.com is probably one of the best ones around. They've been around for a number of years, and they have they have attorneys on staff, and they're not, as I said earlier, they're not that expensive. So that would be a place to start. Okay, if you have properties, you can do a real estate attorney, financial planner, which we'll be giving you copies of here today. And then, of course, we talked about as far as on the insurance company itself. And so it's best, most of these people will talk to you for about 15, 20 minutes without charging you. After that, then they're going to charge you. And today for legal CPAs and stuff, I mean, you're starting at $200 an hour, and depending on where you live, it could be $600 an hour. Okay, but you know what? It is an investment. It is a tax write-off. So to know what you need to do to protect yourself, to set it up for your children, and for the longevity of what you want to do, you know, even if you spend $1,000, you're going to write it off on your taxes. So it's really costing you about $500, and you have the peace of mind and the knowledge now to know this is what I need to do. So don't be afraid to invest a little bit of money into your real estate, you know, portfolio, because that's exactly what you're doing. It's an investment of time and money as far as in it, and it can be very, very helpful. And of course, we have the resources, and here's a couple of them here. One gentleman here is in Riverside. You guys will be getting this, so don't knock yourself out writing it down, or just take a picture with your iPhone or smartphone. Kirk is out in Newport Beach area. I know Kirk is, if you have very in-depth as far as portfolios, they've done a lot of 1031 exchanges, etc., you know, as far as with Kirk there. David Willett, he's with Creative Planning, you know, and this is a gentleman that I use personally. Okay, and Brett Ferguson is somebody that Chrissy has used as well. And I believe they're with Legacy, if I remember, as far as the company itself. And so, and we will send you a couple more on insurance, you know, and so you have pretty much everything that you need as far as to go ahead and make a wise and right decision as far as on your portfolio. So, because, you know, we're all about building generational wealth. And I know earlier, because I was trying to get on the call, I think you went over the thing with Bank of America, right, Chrissia?
Yes.
as far as whether you can get in with 0 down. Guys, that's an opportunity that is not going to be around very long. Okay. And that is if your children or your grandchildren and they need, or you want to even help them get a property so they can get started. Okay. There's not a better time around to do that than right now. Okay. So that is something you need to be rolling on immediately. You can get a hold of, Chrissy or Tyler and get that program going, wherever you're at. It's not in all areas, but I think Chrissy has got it pretty well dialed in on what areas they will cover. If not, we'll find out, but take advantage of that. Give you an example of my VA, just became available again. And so now I can buy a property, even for myself to move in on another property to live in, with 0 down money. Okay. And so when you can even get a $500,000 asset with no money down, I mean, that's unbelievable. The ROI in that is infinite. I mean, you can't even measure the ROI because you didn't put any money down. Right. And so this is something that is truly something that could help your kids or grandchildren really, get them into the game, and even if you only buy a house for whatever, if you can find one for 350 or 450,000, maybe it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,000 square feet, who cares? They're in the game. Okay. And that's the key thing, is get your kids and your grandkids in the game and then get them over to us. And as time goes on, and we'll help build their wealth as we've helped a lot of you do. So, okay, we'll open up for any questions.